Welcome to Rice Up Your Life. My name is Ashlyn Ussery, and today we're going to learn about the basics of rice. Whether you love to use rice in your kitchen or whether you don't really use it at all, we're going to learn about all of it. So we have Joy West with us here today, and she's going to help us learn about the kitchen side of things and make sure that we know the best tips for cooking rice. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You know, rice is one of those ingredients that seems very simple, but once you start looking at it, there's actually a lot to learn. How to cook it, and then a little bit about, once we start, how we can continue to make that rice part of our daily life.
Very cool. So here at the Rice Station, we talk about rice from the field to the fork, and we look at long grain rice and short grain rice and medium grain rice and learn a lot from our researchers and use it in our classroom and our kitchen, and just learn all about Arkansas rice.
You know, Arkansas is the top rice producer in the United States. So if you're eating rice at home, more than likely it came from our state. So before it actually gets into our kitchen though, it has to go through a lot of process. So can you tell us a little bit about the process to get from the field to the kitchen?
Yeah, so rice doesn't just end up on our shelves, right? It starts with our farmers and they grow it, and then it has to go to a mill and goes through a whole process. So rice starts as rough rice, so it has a shell on it. It's kind of hard. We don't want to eat it in that form. We want to make sure we get rid of that shell. That's where our mills come in, and they are able to take that shell off. And when we take the shell off, it turns into brown rice. A lot of folks think that we either grow brown rice or white rice. And so we want to make sure folks know that rice is rice, right? So rice is grown, and brown rice and white rice are technically the same grain. So we just need to take the hull off, and it turns into brown rice, and you have the rice bran that's on it. A lot of folks say that brown rice is healthier for us because of that bran layer. And so to get white rice, all we have to do is just polish off that brown rice, polish off that bran that's on the brown rice. And then we have a white rice. And so that's kind of the process that rice goes through. And you're gonna teach us how to cook probably my favorite rice, white rice. I do love brown rice, but white's probably my favorite. So can you kind of run us through tips and tricks and what we need to know about cooking some white rice?
Oh, of course. You know, when we are cooking rice, we want to double the liquid. That's usually what you do. So today I'm going to use 2 cups of water to 1 cup of white rice. But some people don't like that texture, so they might a different texture. So you can actually lower the amount of water that you use. So sometimes you might use 1.5 cups of liquid instead of the 2 cups. So we're going to add our water today, and then add the rice. Now, when we're cooking with rice, moisture is the key on there. So we want to make sure that we're getting all the moisture inside the kernels. So we're going to stir up just a little bit here, and then we're going to bring this to a boil. Once it starts to boil, then we're going to cover it with our lid, and we're going to turn down the heat to low or to a simmer, and then we're going to let that cook for 15 minutes. Once it's done, we will take it off and we'll let it rest for a little bit. So we're going to let it start cooking now. Okay, so now that it is finished cooking for 15 minutes, we're going to remove it from the heat, but we're going to leave the lid on and let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, that's a good reminder. I feel like I always get really curious and want to lift the lid off, but that's a key reminder to leave that on and let it finish out to make it perfect.
Right, because we want to leave the moisture in there and the steam, and that helps finish cooking it off.
Okay, so going back to the beginning, do you rinse your rice? I hear conflicting things on that. Some people do, some people don't. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I would recommend rinsing, but you don't have to. So the idea behind rinsing is it removes the excess starch, and the starch is what causes the clumping. So by rinsing it, you get a better product where it's fluffier and nice to use, and it actually plumps up the rice.
Okay, very cool. So rice is so versatile. I feel like I love rice fresh, cooking it. I love it leftover. Do you have any like favorite recipes for leftover rice?
Oh, I love making fried rice with leftover rice. You can use up so much in your kitchen. So it's great for using leftover vegetables, for using small bits of meat or other things that you have. And it's a very versatile and quick recipe to do.
Okay, so now let's switch over to brown rice. So brown rice takes a little bit longer to cook. It has that bran layer still on it. So give us any tips and tricks you have for cooking brown rice.
You're right, it does take longer. It takes more time and more water as well. So if you were going to cook 1 cup of brown rice, then you would want to use 2.5 cups of the liquid. It's going to take about 35 to 40 minutes to make the brown rice to that right texture that you like before it's ready to go.
Okay, so brown rice, it takes a little bit longer, but I think it adds a great flavor. It's got that like nutty, earthy flavor to it that I don't think people should skip out on just because it takes a little bit longer. It's definitely worth the wait, right?
It really is. And it adds a lot of fiber, natural fiber, and a lot of nutrients as well. It also holds up well in grain bowls and in salads if you're going to use those as a recipe.
Okay, so is there any tips or tricks that you may have for before we're going to cook it? So like I hear people say that they soak their rice, some people don't. Do you have any opinions on that?
Well, soaking your rice is optional, but if you're wanting to cook faster, then it is a definite must to do. It also can help with the texture and make it a better texture because it plumps up the rice and makes it a little bit better texture. So you can soak it a little bit before and then it'll be ready for cooking.
Okay, that's perfect information because I definitely want my rice to be perfect. You mentioned rice bowls earlier. I love rice bowls. They go with everything and you're easy to make. You can use it leftover rice. Brown rice is great leftover. Do you have any tips on what we should do leftover with our rice?
Well, really, if you're wanting to reheat it, it's not that difficult. You just want to add a splash of water to it. You can reheat it in the microwave or you can do it on the stovetop. Just get it warm and it'll be ready for your next recipe.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to talk about some troubleshooting tips next. So what if my rice turns out too mushy or too dry? What did I do and how can I fix it?
So if it's too mushy, then you probably added too much water or you didn't let it rest after it finished cooking. If it's dry or crunchy, then it needed a few more minutes of steam to absorb some more of that moisture. So it is important to let it sit for those 5 to 10 minutes and rest so that it improves the texture of the rice.
Okay, so that's probably where that lid, not pulling it off, becomes key. Okay, so what about flavor? I know that we cooked our rice in water, but is there anything else that we could maybe cook that in to bring out different flavors or anything?
Oh, absolutely. You can replace the water with other liquids and that adds a lot of the flavor to it. So I like to replace water with broth in my recipes and it gives it a much better flavor for the recipes that I'm using.
I love that idea. Rice is a basic staple for literally anything. You can add whatever you want to in it and truly make it your own. So is there any other tips or tricks that you would give us with storing or eating or cooking rice?
Well, I would like to remind you about food safety. Food safety is very important when it comes to cooked rice. So it's important to remember the 2-hour rule. We want to make sure that all of the food that we are consuming is put in the refrigerator within 2 hours to help keep us from getting sick. So if you have a lot, you can put it in a shallow container. That helps to cool it down a lot faster, and so it gets to the correct temperature in the refrigerator quicker. Also, if you left it out and it's been 2 hours or longer, you really need to throw it away because you do not want to risk getting a foodborne illness.
Yeah, no, that's definitely important. And I would assume that would go in with keeping it in an airtight container, whether it's cooked or dry.
That's right. It's important to keep that air out, especially if you're going to store your dry white rice, you want to make sure that you store it properly. If you do, you can keep it for years. Now, brown rice doesn't last that long, but you do want to keep it in an airtight container in a cool place. But if you'd like for it to last longer, you can actually keep that in the freezer and it'll last much longer.
So we have looked at brown rice and white rice, the difference between the two, and we've looked at some troubleshooting tips, we've looked at storing tips, cooking tips, and so we're gonna put it all to the test. This looks amazing, it's already smelling amazing. Tell us more about what we're gonna cook.
Well, we're actually going to make a basic fried rice recipe that you can alter as you wish. So the first thing that we're gonna do is to heat our pan to medium-high. And then we're going to add 2 cups of chopped vegetables. So we'll add that in. We're going to let that cook down. So today I'm using broccoli, carrots, and red peppers, but you can use any kind of vegetables that you have or you like. So it depends on what size the cut is, how long it takes to cook down the vegetables. I like my fried rice with small bits of vegetables, and especially when I have it nice and colorful, it gives a really pretty plate. But if you like thicker pieces, that's fine. It's just going to take longer for it to cook down. So now I'm going to add our seasonings. The first seasoning I'm going to add is 1 tablespoon of soy sauce that's low sodium. So I'm going to add that to it. Stir that in a little. It's really starting to come together on that.
Smelling so good.
So, isn't it? And then I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder. I love garlic.
Me too.
Going to add that in and get that stirred going. And then the last seasoning is 1.5 teaspoons of onion powder. But you could put fresh onions in there if you prefer as one of your vegetables that you put down on there. All right, so we're going to cook that down a little. And then we're going to add our 2 cups of cold cooked brown rice. Mix that in there with the veggies. Get that all going.
That makes it quick with it already being cooked and ready to go, right? So good.
Yes, but it's always good to use cold rice with this fried rice recipe. So it's important to go ahead and do that, and it can just be leftovers or something that you cook ahead of time. Then we're going to push that to the side, and then we're going to have this middle section here ready for our egg. We're going to scramble our egg in there, get that going. Going to mix that well. Make sure that it's cooked. You know how I don't like eggs that aren't cooked well, so I want to make sure I get that nice and cooked. Once it's cooked, then we're going to mix that in with the veggies and the rice and get that going. Let me go ahead and turn that off because it is ready to eat.
Nice. So we used fresh veggies with this, but we could have also been similar to our rice and used leftover veggies, frozen veggies, or anything like that, right? It didn't have to be fresh.
Right. This is just the basic recipe. You can use, instead of brown rice, you could use white rice, any kind of vegetables that you want, any kind of seasonings. It was a really versatile recipe, and it's great for using up additional items that you already have in your household. So how about I plate this up and we'll try it.
Absolutely.
Here's one for you. Let me get some for myself. And we can try it.
So good and so easy. We made that in like all of, what, 2 minutes?
Definitely.
Perfect.
Very easy recipe to do.
And so flavorful. The brown rice is perfect, but like you said, I think it would be great with white rice as well.
Definitely.
So we've learned today that rice is not just a side dish. It is easy to cook, easy to store, and is perfect for any and every meal.
Exactly. Rice is very versatile. You can use it with all kinds of flavors, with other grains, with vegetables, all kinds of different recipes that you can use with just this one ingredient.
Well, Joy, thank you so much for joining us and walking us through the basics of rice. And thank you for joining us for Rice Up Your Life.